The year 2650 stretched before humanity like an endless star-dusted road, yet for Captain Elias Vance it felt more like a dead-end alley. His vessel, the Stardust, was a rust bucket by galactic standards, its hull a patchwork quilt of emergency repairs and prayer. Humanity itself, a fledgling species in the grand tapestry of the galactic concordium, occupied a forgotten corner of space, their presence barely a whisper amidst the echoes of ancient civilizations. Their ships, while sturdy, were the cosmic equivalent of a sputtering old truck, easily overlooked by the sleek, shimmering vessels of the more advanced species. Elias, a man whose face bore the weathered lines of too many long-haul jumps and too few successful missions, gripped the command chair's armrest, his knuckles white. Their current venture was a desperate gamble, a long-range scavenging mission into the Veil Nebula. This was no ordinary nebula. It was a swirling, treacherous expanse of cosmic dust and rogue gravimetric anomalies, whispered to be the final resting place of countless lost ships and forgotten secrets. Most sane captains avoided it like a black hole, but sanity was a luxury Elias could no longer afford. Their funding was dwindling, their fuel cells sputtering, and the crew, though loyal to a fault, were beginning to show the strain of constant deprivation. "Any readings, Lieutenant Kyle?" Elias's voice was a low rumble, barely cutting through the hum of the ship's ancient engines. Kyle, a young navigation officer with eyes that seemed too wide for the endless void, shook his head. "Just more interference. Captain, the Veil's really living up to its name today. It's like trying to find a pebble in an ocean of static." The main screen displayed a kaleidoscopic swirl of gas and dust, a cosmic painter's palette gone wild. It was beautiful, deadly, and utterly unyielding. Dr. Aris Thorne, the ship's xeno-engineer, a man more comfortable with ancient schematics than social pleasantries, adjusted his spectacles, his gaze fixed on a small, flickering monitor. "The interference isn't natural, Captain," Aris mused, his voice dry as vacuum-sealed rations. "It's too structured, too rhythmic, almost intentional." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Intentional? You think someone's trying to hide something out here?" "Aris, in the most inhospitable corner of the known galaxy." Aris merely shrugged, his attention already back on his readings. "Or something is trying to hide itself." A shiver, colder than the vacuum outside, traced its way down Elias's spine. The Veil Nebula wasn't just a physical barrier. It felt like a presence, a watchful eye in the darkness. Days bled into weeks. The stardust crept through the nebula, a tiny, insignificant moth drawn to an unseen flame. Supplies ran critically low. Morale, once just low, was now subterranean. Then, on what felt like the 1,000th sweep of their long-range sensors, Cale's voice cracked with sudden, disbelieving energy. "Captain, I'm getting something. It's impossible." The main screen, previously a chaotic swirl, now showed a faint but definite blip. And another, and another. A pattern began to resolve itself. Not a small object, but something vast, colossal. Elias leaned forward, his heart thumping against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Magnify, Cale. What is it?" The image slowly sharpened, the blips coalescing into an outline. It was monstrous in scale, a silent leviathan drifting in the heart of the Veil. It wasn't a natural formation, it wasn't a common asteroid, it was a ship, but not just any ship. Its sheer size dwarfed anything Elias had ever seen, anything the galactic concordium had ever built. Its dimensions were wrong, its design alien and utterly ancient. It lay there, cloaked in cosmic dust and eons of silence, a ghost ship in a forgotten graveyard. "Scans confirm." Aris's voice was hushed, almost reverent. "It's derelict. No power signature, no life signs. But its mass is off the charts. It's solid and old, unfathomably old." Elias stared, mesmerized. The vessel was a colossal behemoth, scarred by the millennia, yet somehow still intact, a dark silhouette against the distant, shimmering gas clouds. Its sheer scale was disorienting, its presence a stark reminder of how small, how young humanity truly was in the vastness of the cosmos. This wasn't just a find, it was an archaeological marvel, a discovery that could rewrite galactic history. But why was it here? Why forgotten? And what secrets did this silent titan hold within its colossal, ancient hull? A prickle of unease. Then anticipation began to replace the desperation that had been Elias's constant companion. The stardust was no longer just scavenging. It had stumbled upon a mystery so profound, it threatened to pull humanity from the fringes of the galaxy, right into its very heart. The Leviathan's echo. The colossal derelict loomed before the stardust, a silent Leviathan suspended in the black. Its ancient hull, a testament to forgotten artistry and immense power. Captain Elias Vance felt a strange mix of awe and trepidation as the stardust edged closer, its own light swallowed by the sheer scale of the larger vessel. "Docking clamps engaged," Lieutenant Cale announced, his voice hushed. Elias nodded, his gaze fixed on the derelict's nearest access hatch, a massive, ornate gateway that seemed to hum with an unheard echo of its builders. Dr. Aris Thorne, already bustling with an energy Elias rarely saw, was practically vibrating. "The external scans are incredible, Captain. The hull composition alone, it's unlike anything we've ever catalogued. It's a multi-layered composite, almost organic in its resilience. And there's a localized gravimetric field, perfectly stable, preventing atmospheric loss despite visible hull breaches. This wasn't just a dead ship, it was a testament to impossible engineering." Elias assembled his away team, Aris, Kyle, and 2 security personnel, Jian Li and Omar Khan, their pulse rifles held at the ready, though Elias knew deep down they were more for comfort than any real defense against whatever secrets this behemoth held. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss, revealing a vast, dimly lit corridor stretching into the darkness. The air inside was still and cool, carrying a faint metallic scent that was strangely clean, not the stale stench of decay Elias expected from something so old. "Atmosphere is breathable," Kyle reported, his scanner sweeping the space. "Gravity stable, power readings minimal, almost residual." Their boots echoed eerily as they advanced, their flashlights cutting through the gloom, revealing walls adorned with intricate, non-Euclidean patterns that seemed to shift as they walked, playing tricks on the eyes. The silence was profound, broken only by their footsteps and the soft hum of their equipment. It was the kind of silence that pressed in on you, heavy with the weight of untold centuries. As they delved deeper, the sense of vastness became almost oppressive. Corridors stretched for what felt like kilometers, leading into cavernous bays that could swallow the stardust whole. There were no signs of conflict, no scorch marks or shattered bulkheads, suggesting the ship hadn't been destroyed in battle. It had simply stopped. But why? "Captain, look at this," Aris called out, his voice a low whisper. They had entered a chamber unlike any other. It was circular, its walls smooth and unblemished, bathed in a soft, pulsating blue light emanating from a central structure. This structure was a colossal, crystalline pillar, intricately carved, reaching from floor to ceiling. It hummed with a deep, resonant frequency that vibrated in their bones. "Residual power signature is off the charts here," Kyle murmured, his eyes wide. "It's alive." Aris approached the pillar, his engineer's instincts overriding any sense of caution. "This isn't a power source in the traditional sense," he mused, tracing a hand over the smooth, cool surface of the crystal. "It feels like a brain, a central processing unit, perhaps." As his fingers brushed against a particularly intricate whorl in the crystal, A ripple of light pulsed outwards from his touch, spreading across the pillar's surface. The hum intensified, a deep, sonorous thrum that filled the chamber, vibrating through the deck plates. Elias instinctively drew his sidearm, Gian and Omar raising their rifles, but Aris remained mesmerized, his face alight with scientific wonder. The pulsations grew stronger, casting shifting patterns of blue light across the chamber. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, a section of the crystalline pillar began to glow brighter, coalescing into a complex array of symbols, unlike anything Elias had ever seen. They shifted and flowed, too intricate to be simple script, too organized to be random. "It's awakening," Aris breathed, a tremor in his voice. "The core system. It's been dormant, waiting." Suddenly a gentle tremor ran through the deck. The blue light intensified, bathing the chamber in an ethereal glow. From the center of the crystalline pillar, a faint, rhythmic pulse began, like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. It wasn't a warning, nor was it threatening. It was an invitation. The air in the chamber grew strangely warm, almost comforting. Then, from the very heart of the pillar, a shimmering holographic projection flickered into existence. It wasn't an alien being, nor was it a direct message. Instead, it was a complex, multi-layered schematic. Elias's eyes widened. It was a blueprint, incredibly detailed, depicting not just the internal workings of the Dreadnought, but something else. A vast, swirling energy field, constantly expanding, constantly changing, and at the center of this field, the Dreadnought itself, acting as a focal point. Around the Dreadnought, smaller, distinct energy signatures were visible, moving, like distant celestial bodies, interacting with the larger field. This wasn't just a ship, it was part of a much larger system. As the projection shifted, the schematics began to zoom in on a specific section of the Dreadnought, highlighting a component Elias couldn't even begin to comprehend. A swirling vortex of light and energy contained within the heart of the ship, labeled with that same recurring enigmatic symbol they'd seen on the external scans. It was the source of the Dreadnought's unimaginable power, a silent, beating heart within the Leviathan. The atmosphere in the chamber thickened with a palpable sense of discovery, mixed with a chilling realization. This wasn't just a forgotten ship. It was a forgotten key to something immense, something that hummed with a dormant power waiting to be unleashed. The sheer alien complexity of the schematics, the silent ancient hum of the crystal, and the profound echoing silence of the Dreadnought itself, all combined to create a feeling of being utterly insignificant, yet standing on the precipice of something universe-altering. The Stardust had found more than just salvage. They had found a sleeping giant, and its awakening was just beginning. The Genesis engine, the holographic projection shimmered, casting an ethereal glow over the faces of Captain Elias Vance and his crew. Dr. Aris Thorne, his usually stoic demeanor, replaced by wide-eyed wonder, leaned closer to the crystalline pillar. The schematics continued to shift and flow, displaying intricate designs that defied human understanding, yet somehow, in their complex elegance, suggested a singular, awe-inspiring purpose. Elias, despite his lack of advanced engineering knowledge, could instinctively feel the profound significance of what they were witnessing. This was no mere map of a ship, it was a guide to a fundamental force. The central component, highlighted repeatedly by the shifting light, was not a weapon bay or an engine room, but a swirling vortex of energy contained within the Dreadnought's core, labeled with that recurring, enigmatic symbol, a spiral within a circle, a sign that now felt less like decoration and more like a name. Iris, his fingers tracing patterns in the air as if grasping invisible equations, finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. It's a matter weaver, Captain. or what their language likely called it. It's not a generator, not a replicator. In the way we understand them, it's something far beyond. Elias frowned, trying to make sense of the jargon. A matter weaver. What does that even mean, Aris? Aris turned, his eyes alight with a frantic, almost desperate excitement. It means it can synthesize any known element, any compound, from raw energy and the cosmic dust that's literally all around us. Think of it, Captain. Not just pulling resources from asteroids or gas giants, but creating them, transmuting energy directly into matter. Iron from starlight, water from vacuum, rare earth elements from nothing more than a thought. If the energy input is right, this isn't just infinite power, it's infinite creation. The revelation hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the derelict. Infinite creation. The implications were staggering, terrifying. The very foundation of galactic commerce, of power, of conflict, all built on the scarcity of resources, would be rendered meaningless. Wars fought over planets rich in minerals, empires built on monopolizing rare elements, all of it would become obsolete in the face of such a device. This wasn't just a game changer, it was a rule breaker. Lieutenant Kale, who had been quietly monitoring the Dreadnought systems, suddenly gasped. "Captain, the symbol, I've cross-referenced it with every known ancient galactic distress. Frequency? It's broadcasting on a unique band, almost like a specific signature. But it's not just a distress call, it's an identification marker. The Dreadnought wasn't just lost, it was intentionally broadcasting its location, its nature." Aris nodded slowly. Precisely. This wasn't just a warship, it was a beacon, a last desperate hope. The race that built this, they must have faced an existential threat, a threat they believed could only be countered by universal abundance, by removing the very cause of conflict, or perhaps by offering a solution to a galaxy-wide famine or crisis. The pieces began to click into place, forming a picture far grander and more terrifying than Elias had imagined. This forgotten dreadnought, which they had now unofficially christened the Genesis, wasn't just a marvel of engineering. It was a legacy, a desperate message in a bottle from a vanished civilization, offering a tool that could either save or shatter the current galactic order. The recurring symbol, once thought to be decorative, now stood revealed as an ancient galactic distress signal, broadcast on a unique frequency, hinting that the Dreadnought was more than a forgotten weapon. It was a last-ditch effort for survival by a vanished civilization. They spent the next few days working tirelessly, driven by a mixture of scientific curiosity and a growing sense of urgency. Aris, with Kyle's help, meticulously deciphered more of the holographic schematics, confirming the Matter Weaver's capabilities. He discovered that the Dreadnought itself was powered by the Matter Weaver, a self-sustaining system of truly incredible efficiency. They also learned how to access basic functions, like internal lighting and environmental controls, bringing parts of the ancient Leviathan to a dim, echoing life. The sheer scale of the Genesis was overwhelming. Exploring it was like navigating a deserted city of impossible grandeur. There were vast, empty cargo bays that could hold fleets, intricate conduit networks glowing with a faint residual energy, and even vast cavernous spaces that Aris theorized were once agricultural zones, designed to sustain thousands for centuries on long voyages. The silence, however, remained profound, a testament to the fact that whatever civilization built this marvel, they were long gone. Their presence was only felt in the humming of the crystals and the whispers of their lost technology. One afternoon, as Aris was meticulously recalibrating the primary access port to the Matter Weaver's core, he noticed a faint, pulsing light emanating from a deeply embedded secondary console, obscured by centuries of neglect. It was the same unique frequency as the distress signal, "Captain," Aris called out, his voice tight with concentration, "I'm detecting a feedback loop. It's faint, but the Genesis isn't just broadcasting the distress signal. It's amplifying it. It's drawing energy from this entire nebula to boost its signal. It's like a colossal amplifier, broadcasting its existence and its capabilities across the entire galaxy." Elias felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. The Genesis had been dormant, a silent secret for millennia. But now, with their presence and Aris's accidental activation of its core systems, it was screaming its existence to the stars, announcing the rediscovery of its impossible power to anyone listening. The thought of who might be listening, who might respond to such a powerful ancient call, sent a wave of dread through him. They were just a small, struggling human crew on a glorified junker of a ship. They were utterly unprepared for the kind of attention this colossal artifact would surely draw. The Veil Nebula, once their hiding place, now felt like a spotlight, highlighting their impossible find to the hungry eyes of the galaxy. The peace, the quiet mystery of the Genesis, was about to be shattered. The beacon's call, the hum of the Matter Weaver. Within the Genesis, Dreadnought had become a constant low thrum, a silent song of creation echoing through its ancient halls. For Captain Elias Vance, it was a sound both wondrous and terrifying. Dr. Aris Thorne and Lieutenant Cale had confirmed their fears. The Genesis wasn't just broadcasting its unique distress signal, it was amplifying it, using the very energy of the Veil Nebula as a cosmic megaphone. This wasn't a gentle whisper. It was a galactic shout, announcing the rediscovery of the legendary World Forge to anyone with sensors tuned to ancient frequencies. Elias watched the energy readings on Kyle's console, a knot tightening in his stomach. The signal pulsed outwards, a ripple spreading across the vast ocean of space, certain to reach ears far more powerful and less benevolent than their own. Humanity, for all its ingenuity, was a small fish in a very large, dangerous pond. They had stumbled upon a secret that could shatter the delicate balance of the galaxy, and now that secret was screaming for attention. Thousands of light years away, in the heart of the Krell Imperium, Admiral Vorlag received the report. His craggy, multifaceted eyes narrowed as the ancient signal flared across his strategic display. "The World Forge," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. For centuries, the Krell had sought the mythical device, believing it to be the key to their endless resource wars, the ultimate tool to cement their dominion over the galactic concordium. Their intelligence networks had scoured countless dead worlds, followed countless false leads, and now a clear, unmistakable signature, stronger than any before, emanating from a forgotten sector. "Prepare the vanguard fleet," Vorlag commanded, his voice cold and sharp. "Immediate hyperspace jump, secure the artifact, eliminate any resistance." His ambition burned bright. This was their destiny. The Krell warships, sleek and predatory, began to spool up their drives, eager for the hunt. Meanwhile, in the shadowed, cloistered chambers of the Syndicate Collective, Director Viola observed the same sudden surge in ancient energy readings. Unlike the Krell, the Syndicate valued information and subtle influence over brute force. They understood the true power of the World Forge, not just as a tool for creation, but as a weapon of unprecedented economic and political control. Viola's face, usually serene, was taut with concentration. "This is unprecedented," she murmured to her lieutenants. "The signature is unmistakable. It means the precursor's final gambit has been found. And by whom?" Her analytical mind quickly pinpointed the source. A remote backwater sector, inhabited by a species known only as humans, barely registered on the galactic stage. "Send a scout group, covertly," she instructed, her voice soft but absolute. "Observe," and prepare our diplomatic assets. The Krell will undoubtedly move first, with their usual bluntness. We shall be the silent shadow, ready to acquire what they cannot simply take. The Syndicate's ships, cloaked and swift, began their own calculated journey towards the Veil Nebula, their intentions as hidden as their vessels. Back on the Genesis, the air grew thick with tension. Kale's long-range sensors, now boosted by the Dreadnought's residual power, began to pick up faint but undeniable hyperspace signatures. "Captain," Kale's voice was strained, "multiple contacts, high-speed approaches. They're military vessels, Captain, and they're not Concordium ships." Elias felt a cold dread settle in his gut. This was it. The galaxy was calling. "Can you identify them, Kyle?" The young lieutenant frantically worked his console. One group, Krell Imperium. Their signature is unmistakable. Heavy cruisers, battle-ready. The other, cloaked, hard to get a lock, but the energy profile matches known Syndicate collective scout vessels. "They're both coming here, Captain, and they're coming fast." The realization hit Elias like a physical blow. Two of the most dominant, often warring galactic powers, both converging on their position, drawn by the irresistible siren call of the Genesis. They hadn't found a forgotten relic. They had ignited a powder keg. Their small research vessel, the Stardust, was utterly defenseless against such forces. Even the Genesis, for all its power, was a mystery they barely understood. Its matter weaver was a tool of creation, not destruction, and they had no idea how to defend themselves. Fear, stark and raw, gripped the crew. Omar and Guiane clutched their pulse rifles, their faces grim. Aris, though still captivated by the Dreadnought systems, looked up, his brow furrowed with concern. "They'll want this, Captain," Aris said, his voice flat. "No one will let this kind of power simply exist without trying to control it." Elias knew. The struggle for resources defined galactic politics. This Dreadnought, this world forge, offered an end to scarcity, a fundamental shift in power that no empire would willingly let slip into the hands of another, especially not a small, insignificant species like humanity. They were caught between two titans, clinging to a prize that neither would ever relinquish. The silence of the Veil Nebula, once profound and mysterious, now felt heavy with the unspoken promise of impending conflict, a cosmic storm brewing on their doorstep. Humanity, once an obscure footnote, was about to be thrust onto the main stage of galactic history, whether they were ready or not. The Genesis, a forgotten beacon, had finally been answered, and the galaxy was about to change forever. A human gambit. The Krell Imperium's forward fleet materialized from hyperspace with a sickening lurch, their massive battlecruisers eclipsing the distant starlight, casting long, menacing shadows across the Veil Nebula. Captain Elias Vance watched their arrival on the Stardust's main screen, his breath catching in his throat. These were not scout ships. These were instruments of war, bristling with weaponry, their intent clear. A harsh, guttural voice crackled over the comms, amplified across all frequencies. "Unidentified vessel, this is Admiral Xylos of the Krell Imperium. You are in possession of a Krell artifact. Surrender the World Forge immediately or face annihilation. You have 5 cycles to comply." 5 cycles, not minutes, but a measurement of time that felt impossibly short. Elias felt the familiar dread creeping in, but something else stirred within him, a stubborn refusal to simply roll over. Beside him, Lieutenant Kale's console flashed red with targeting locks. "Captain, they're locking weapons. They're not bluffing." Dr. Aris Thorne, who had been frantically working at a modified console connected to the Genesis's systems, looked up, his face pale but determined. "Captain, we can't fight them. Our shields wouldn't even register, but the Matter Weaver, we have theoretical access. We can make it do something." Elias turned to him, hope flickering. "What?" "Create a weapon. We don't even know how to properly operate it. Eris shook his head. No, not a weapon. Something else. Something that fundamentally changes the game. This Dreadnought, the Genesis, was designed to end scarcity. What if we use it for that purpose right now for everyone to see? Elias stared. At him, a crazy idea forming. You mean give them resources, the very thing they're fighting over? Aris nodded, his eyes bright with a dangerous brilliance. Not just for them, for both of them. We flood the market. We make their resource wars irrelevant. It's a gamble, Captain, but it's the only one we have. Just as Admiral Xylos's countdown reached 2 cycles, a new set of hyperspace signatures appeared, cloaked, but their energy profiles unmistakably belonging to the Syndicate Collective. Director Vila's smaller, more agile fleet emerged, positioning themselves between the Krell and the Genesis. The Krell ships immediately shifted. Their focus, their weapons, now dividing their attention between the Syndicate and humanity. The comms erupted in a cacophony of threats and accusations. The standoff was complete, the cosmic stage set for a 3-way conflict that humanity was ill-equipped to survive. Elias took a deep breath, the decision made. Aris, Kale, prep the Matter Weaver, full power, target their supply lines, their contested zones, flood them with what they're fighting over. Omar, Jian, get ready for evasive maneuvers, everyone brace for impact. With a silent prayer, Aris initiated the sequence. The crystalline core of the Genesis pulsed with an almost blinding light, its hum deepening into a resonant thrum that vibrated through the very fabric of space. On the main view screen, a ripple of shimmering energy began to emanate from the Dreadnought's vast hull. This wasn't a weapon blast. It was something far stranger, far more profound. Tiny, luminous motes of energy, visible even against the backdrop of the nebula, streamed outwards, coalescing into discernible elements. Carbon, silicon, rare earth metals, even vast clouds of hydrogen and oxygen, all synthesized in impossible quantities. The Genesis was not just creating, it was broadcasting creation on a galactic scale, targeting the very regions where the Krell and Syndicate had been locked in centuries of bloody conflict over scarce resources. The effect was instantaneous and utterly disorienting to the warring fleets. On the Krell battle bridge, Admiral Xylos watched in stunned silence as his sensor displays went wild. Their long-range scouts, positioned near a contested asteroid field, reported sudden, impossible concentrations of prime minerals appearing out of nowhere. Entire star systems, once barren or hard-fought, were now suddenly overflowing with easily accessible resources. The same reports flooded Director Vila's comms, her tactical screens designed to track supply lines and strategic choke points, now showed those choke points dissolving, rendered meaningless by an endless unearned bounty. The Krell and Syndicate commanders, whose entire strategies were based on scarcity and control, were suddenly faced with an unfathomable paradox. Their objectives were being met by a third party without a single shot fired. Cease fire! Cease! A fire! Admiral Xylos's voice thundered, a mix of rage and utter bewilderment. His ships, locked in targeting mode, hesitated, their crews struggling to process the impossible situation. The Syndicate fleet, equally confused, held their positions, their cloaking fields flickering as their sensors struggled to reconcile the sudden glut of resources with their established intelligence. Elias, watching the chaos unfold, felt a surge of grim satisfaction. It was working. Humanity's gamble wasn't about winning a fight, it was about changing the rules of the game entirely. "Keep it going, Aris," he urged, his voice hoarse. "Don't stop." The Genesis continued its silent symphony of creation, pouring endless resources into the disputed territories, drowning the very concept of scarcity in a flood of abundance. Sasuo, Krell and Syndicate, accustomed to battling over crumbs, were now presented with an entire feast, and they didn't know how to react. They were momentarily paralyzed, their ancient instincts for conquest and control clashing with the sudden, undeniable reality of limitless bounty. Humanity, using the very power that drew their enemies, had flipped the galactic chessboard, leaving two mighty empires reeling in disbelief. The future, once certain to be filled with fire and destruction, had suddenly become an open question, swirling with the echoes of creation. The unforeseen legacy, the cosmic silence that followed humanity's unprecedented gamble, was more deafening than any battle. Admiral Xylos of the Krell Imperium, his command bridge a tableau of stunned faces, stared at the sensor readouts. The reports kept pouring in. Entire planetary systems, once fiercely contested for their meager mineral deposits, were now swimming in unimaginable wealth. Raw materials, synthesized by the Genesis Dreadnought, were now freely available, drifting in space or gently settling onto barren worlds. His entire strategic doctrine, forged over centuries of conflict driven by scarcity, had evaporated in an instant. The very foundation of his empire's expansion, the acquisition of resources, was suddenly meaningless. Director Viola of the Syndicate Collective, observing from her cloaked vessel, felt a cold knot of apprehension. Humanity, a species they had barely acknowledged, had shattered the delicate balance of power, not with a weapon, but with a sudden, overwhelming act of creation. Their careful plans of economic manipulation and covert acquisition were now obsolete. The galaxy, as she knew it, was utterly transformed. On the bridge of the Stardust, Captain Elias Vance watched the Krell and Syndicate fleets still hovering in a bewildered standoff. The Matter Weaver within the Genesis continued its steady, a silent, relentless outpouring of abundance. "They're not attacking," Lieutenant Cale whispered, disbelief heavy in his voice. "They're just staring." Dr. Eris Thorne, exhausted but exhilarated, leaned against a console. "They're processing. Their entire understanding of galactic economics, of power, has been upended. When you can literally pull infinite resources from the void, what's left to fight over?" Elias felt a wave of fatigue, but also an unexpected surge of pride. They had done the impossible. They had used an ancient device not for conquest, but for something truly disruptive, truly human in its audacity. The Krell and Syndicate, unable to rationalize a war when their objectives were being met without conflict, began to pull back. It wasn't a retreat of defeat, but a tactical withdrawal born of utter confusion. Their ships, once poised for battle, now moved with an almost hesitant grace, like predators whose prey had suddenly turned into an unmanageable feast. News of the World Forge and humanity's audacious act spread like wildfire across the galactic concordium. At first, it was dismissed as impossible, a wild rumor from the fringe, but as independent sensor readings confirmed the sudden, inexplicable abundance of resources in disputed territories, skepticism turned to shock, then to an eager scramble for information. Established trade guilds, massive corporations built on resource control, and even the Concordium's governing council suddenly found their very existence questioned. The news reached every corner of the galaxy, creating a ripple effect that reshaped alliances and shattered old rivalries. Planets that had starved for essential minerals now found themselves awash in them. Systems that had been battlegrounds for centuries now had no reason to fight. The Krell and Syndicate, despite their initial confusion, were forced to confront a new reality. Their internal structures, built on the principle of scarcity, began to buckle under the weight of unexpected plenty. Their admirals and directors, once focused on strategic acquisition, now faced the daunting task of re-evaluating everything. Weeks turned into months. The Genesis, still operating under the careful supervision of Aris and his team, continued its work, subtly shifting galactic economies. Humanity, no longer a forgotten species, became the focal point of galactic attention. Diplomatic envoys from every major power, from the stoic Valorian collective to the opportunistic Ferengi alliance, arrived at humanity's newly established outpost near the Genesis, seeking understanding, seeking advantage, seeking answers. The Concordium, once ambivalent towards humanity, now saw them as vital, a bridge to this new, abundant future. Elias, reluctant to embrace the role of diplomat, found himself at the head of a fledgling Council of Concord task force dedicated to managing the impact of the Genesis. It wasn't always easy. Old habits died hard. There were still those who tried to seize the Dreadnought, still those who tried to hoard the new abundance, but the sheer, overwhelming scale of the Matter Weaver's output made such efforts futile. The Genesis became known across the galaxy not as a weapon, but as the Great Equalizer. Its very existence forced a re-evaluation of galactic society. Conflicts that had simmered for centuries cooled as the underlying causes vanished. New forms of trade, based on specialized labor and advanced technology rather than raw materials, began to emerge. Humanity, once defined by its struggles, now found itself defined by its unique connection to this ancient power. They became the reluctant guardians of a new cosmic order, arbiters of a peace that had been imposed not through force, but through overwhelming generosity. The Veil Nebula, once a graveyard, became a beacon of a new age, a testament to the unforeseen. Legacy of a forgotten dreadnought. Elias Vance, the captain of a once struggling scavenger vessel, now looked out at a galaxy transformed. It wasn't perfect. New challenges would surely arise. But the future, once defined by scarcity and conflict, now promised abundance and cooperation, all because a small, determined human crew had dared to use a mythical power not for conquest, but for creation. The galaxy, forever changed, looked to humanity not as insignificant, but as the unlikely catalyst for a brighter, more hopeful tomorrow.